Bang! Bang! Boys, it happened. That was insane. That was like actually like I'm like at a loss for words. That was one of the most ridiculous games I've ever watched, let alone watched this season. The boys, oh man, I don't even know where to start. Like the calls were wild, the fouls were wild, the plays were ridiculous, and the ending was just could not have called for a better ending. Honestly, I thought it was going to be a lot worse. I'm okay with that. We're ready for business here. Hold on, let me get my collar out so we can have our healthy little conversation here. Like businessmen that we are, instead of starting with the ratings like I normally do, I think I just got to walk through the different goals that occurred because it was a mess. This entire game, for the vast majority of it, was a struggle bus play. At the very start, man, Benfica came out incredibly well. I think a lot of it, it's easy to react like Barcelona's terrible or the refs were bad, blah, 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 blah. I think Benfica were just well prepared for the game. They were going after the back line like crazy, putting runs in behind to move the back line back and then having an extra runner coming in who was going to be onside. And, you know, obviously it worked. They scored within the first 3 minutes, I believe. And then from there, it was just incredibly difficult. We saw that same thing happen a couple of times. We didn't really concede off that technically again. We struggled, though, to defend consistently well. And I think Benfica were playing around our press pretty well. And making it very difficult for us to do much, if anything, at all. Now, then comes the pen on Balde. I think Balde had a pretty solid game for the most part. This was a difficult match for everybody. And I think Barca players, for the most part, played really not their best. They struggled a lot in the first half. So my whole overall rating for them would just not be very good. Probably like a 6 team rating, with Pedri and Balde probably being the best. With the Balde pen, I would call it a pen. Yes, Balde's going away from goal, but he has stepped on. There's very clear contact. Those are called pens nowadays. We could have a conversation if it should or should not be. Whatever. It's a pen. Lewandowski put in a good strike on it, sent the keeper the other way. Now we're up, or now we're tying 1-1. Following that up, Chesney decided to murder Balde, or vice versa, and any momentum that was created was immediately sucked away, which was so unfortunate. And Lars in the stream on Big Up today made a good point, saying that I think a lot of it was they were putting us under so much pressure, making it difficult for us to move forward or create or be confident on the ball or defending. And that leads to mistakes like it did today where Chesney took out Balde. Thankfully, they were both okay, but I think Balde had a really good game leading up to that, and that was a little unfortunate for it to go that way. And we were down 2-1. That was like such a freak goal, but as you'll learn, or if you haven't watched it, that was not at all the last freak goal. And honestly, it was like maybe the first of many freak goals of the day. And then next, they were attacking pretty well, as they had been for most of the game, and they got another opportunity, at which point Chesney took out one of their attackers. This Danish guy had a game. He had himself a day on the left wing today. He was playing incredibly well. But I don't know. Chesney apparently took him out. To me, it looks a little bit like he jumps over him and there isn't any contact. I could be missing the angles. Whatever. They called it a pen, and I'm not complaining that much because there's another conversation to have later. Actually, there's 2 more conversations to have later in the video. But they called it a pen. And the Greek dude finishes it off pretty well. He had a pretty solid game, you know, finished chances when he got them. Good for him. But as it got closer to halftime, I think the Barcelona side gained a little bit of momentum. Benfica were becoming a little bit tired. They were breaking out a little bit less. They were moving the ball slightly less well. But Barcelona were still struggling to move a ball around and to connect passes, to continue connecting passes, with the exception of maybe Pedri. I think he was really the best player on the pitch for the vast majority of this game. Really well done. And I think the team has much more difficulty if it's not for him today. They probably lose by a significant margin, honestly. After halftime, we see Hansi Flick make a little bit of changes. And we were talking again on Big Up, which is where I stream all my watch-alongs. I'll put the link in the description. We were talking at halftime that Barcelona needed to make changes, to do something to allow for a little bit more of maybe support for Lewandowski centrally, and especially give Pedri more options to make a play, hopefully also opening up lanes and space for Lamine and Balde to make space on their opposite sides. And that would happen eventually, but it took a little while. We did end up scoring a freak goal that bounced off Rafinha's forehead off a clearance from the keeper from like 40 yards out and went right into the net. There are ridiculous things that happened today. Chesney assaulted Balde. Rafinha scored with his head from 45 yards out. off a deflection from the keeper. That was insane. And then Araujo scored an own goal off a ball that very could have easily just been handled by the keeper. Again, it's an unlucky deflection. There's got to be a little bit more communication, and I think that really goes down to Benfica putting so much pressure on this Barcelona side. And, Araujo not being used to that, playing that much, especially in really tense matches. Chesney, the same can be said about him. So these guys clearly need to play a little bit more under pressure. And that's been a symptom of Hansi Flick's Barcelona playing so well, where most of the time they really aren't being put under so much pressure in most of the games. Like, even when they have leads, usually it's a significant lead where they don't really have to struggle that much. And then when it's a little bit smaller than that, well, it gets difficult for the side like it did today. But I want to say that at this point, Barcelona were looking a little bit better, in my opinion. Hansi Flick brought in Fermin Lopez and Frenkie de Jong for Gavi and Marc Casado, and I think that was helping them be a little bit more open with the ball. I think Fermin was playing a lot better as more of a wider player, offering a little bit more support to Balde, while Rafinha was then allowed to move more central. And I think that overall just created a lot more space by, with Fermin's running and Rafinha's running on the opposite side, created space for then Balde and Lamine to operate more. And you saw Lamine get a little bit warmer into the game, who struggled a little bit throughout this game. And then, all hell broke loose. Lewandowski scores a pen that there's not that much contact on Lamine, but there definitely is some contact. He wraps him around, he grabs his shoulder, and, it's soft. It's definitely soft, but I would argue the pen for Benfica was soft earlier. And so, it is what it is. Things like that kind of happen. I don't love the call. Obviously, I'm fine with it because it happened for us. And then Eric Garcia scored a great header off a ball from Pedri. Great pass from Pedri. Really, really well done. I think it's fortunate. I think it's great to see that they finally were able to get their heads on a ball. They had such a difficulty getting anything substantially going in the air. Eric Garcia, man, my goat. Let's go. And then Rafinha would end up scoring at full time to win 5-4. That was a wild finish from him. That's what I tried to emulate with my intro that, I'm sorry, that was embarrassing to watch as well. But I think, you can make an argument. Ferran Torres got the assist there. Interesting. Oh, yeah, because he did collect it on his chest and boot it up. Wow, that was just incredible work from Rafinha, beating his man, cutting in on his left foot. Everybody knew he was going to cut in on his left foot. I had no confidence in him, honestly. I'm so glad he proved me wrong. It was dirty work from him. Great job. You could argue that there might have been a foul on the Benfica. I don't know if that was the winger or the striker. On the opposite side of the pitch, I also didn't see a ton of replays of it, so I don't really know what's going on. Commentators really wanted Benfica to win that whole time. It seemed like on all the streams, no matter what language they were listening to, were really all going for Benfica. I think it's definitely an argument that can be made, but again, I didn't see it all that well. I didn't see that many replays of it, so I can't touch that much on it. Whatever, though. We won. That's what I care about. Vamos, Visca Barça, let's go. But okay, all right, not enough rambling. Let's do some player ratings here and then get on with the show, eh? Chesney, man. Oh, he did make one save specifically near the end of the match. That was really well done from him. I'm going to give him just a 5 also for taking down the player. I think he did okay. I think the communication could be better with Araujo on the own goal that he scored. So overall, I think he needs to be penalized for that. I think a 5 is probably maybe even too generous. You could argue lower than that. Balde, I thought he was really good. I'm going to give Balde a 7.5, maybe an 8. He had a lot of responsibility in the second half and at the end of the first half where it was difficult for him to find any space. But at the beginning of the match, when he was able to find space, and later on when he was able to find space, he was pretty good. I really liked the way Balde played today. Overall, pretty good job from him today. I'm going to give him a 7.5 and an 8. Then Cubarsí and Araujo. It was an interesting tactical setup from them in the first half where neither one of them was, or at least Cubarsí was struggling to get in front of his man. That's why they scored the first goal. He was behind his man. And then Araujo was in a weird space, kind of seemingly covering for Cubarsí, which then left a lot of space for Koundé and between Koundé and Ron. And that, left some space for the attackers. And they had a tough time. I think, when you concede 4, it's hard to give the backline much positive votes here, but I do think Araujo was okay, and if he didn't have that own goal, he would be better. So I'll give him a 7. I think Cubarsí was a little bit worse. I think Araujo was better, was winning those headers against the strikers that were, pretty strong, obviously, and did a pretty good job doing what he could, all things considered, with the amount of runners they had behind them. So I think a 7 is probably fair, maybe a 6. I'll give him a 6.5. They did concede 4. And maybe a 6.5, 6 for Cubarsí. Koundé did not have a good game. I don't think Koundé was very good. Wasn't winning those tackles, wasn't contributing all that much going forward. Missed that chance on that pass. Was that from Pedri? beautiful ball in behind. Great run from Koundé to get in that spot. And he just, kind of fluffs it. Like, I probably would have finished that chance if I were in his position. It's a difficult chance. You want him to put it at least on goal, so maybe then the keeper can flash it across net, giving somebody else an opportunity. It is what it is, but not his best game. I'm going to give him a 5.5. I just really don't think he was too sharp today. Castro had a ton of responsibility, had to move around so much because of the way Benfica were set up. Really, not necessarily exposing the number 10, but just being able to find space between the center backs and the midfield, that Castro had to do so many last-second tackles to save a counterattack or whatever. And I think he did a pretty good job of that. It wasn't an incredible game from him. I think he did pretty well today, though. So I'm going to give him a 7.5, and I think that's pretty fair. Pedri, I'm going to give him a 9.5. I really don't think he put a foot wrong. Easily could have had 2 or 3 assists. Ended up having 1. Great job from him today. Seemed like the only guy who could play football today for us for a little while. That's how difficult Benfica were making it for these guys. That only Pedri looked good for several moments in this match. And, I think everyone did turn it around a little bit, but great job from Pedri, man. I really think he was good today. And then we'll go to Gavi next. I don't think Gavi had a great game. Again, he was having a very difficult time finding any space. Either one of the midfielders were man marking him, or it was the wingers at sometimes. And then Otamendi was slamming into him a couple times, and it was, really difficult for him to have any time, any chance on the ball. They were cutting off that central spot where Barcelona have been creating a lot. And so he didn't have a great game. He ended up coming off, and then I think the next subs played better. I think it's also to do with the tactical changes of Fermin playing wide. Gavi doesn't really play wide, even though we saw him do that under Xavi for a little while. Fermin played wide. That allowed Rafinha to come central, and that worked a little bit better in creating space for our wide attackers, Balde included. And then going to Lamine, I think Lamine really struggled for most of this game to find any space. He was double teamed a lot, but the second they were able to figure out a tactic that would create space for him in moving, I think, Rafinha over there, it was just night and day. It was a night and day difference seeing his ability to operate in space, operate with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more time on the ball. Not a lot of time on the ball, but just enough to really be substantial. I think he really turned it around, played a lot better in the second half, played some really good balls in. And so I'm going to give him a 7 for his turnaround, maybe even a 7.5, I think is probably fair. Rafinha, though, I thought Rafinha had a shocker for the vast majority of the match. Missed one specific chance that really stands out, but, overall it just could have been a lot better. When the tactics changed, he got better, as did most of the team, but that finish at the end, and then the header goal, right, needs to be mentioned, but I feel like I got to rate, I don't know, the Johan Cruyff, the god of football, for that, because that was just ridiculous. I can't believe that all happened, so... but the second goal was pure class, genuinely ridiculous. Again, you could argue if it was, rightfully allowed, whatever. I don't want to have that conversation right now. And I didn't see enough highlights of it to really talk on it like I know what I'm talking about. So, great goal from Rafinha. Really well done. It's such a difficult chance there. Yeah, you're one-on-one with the center back, but, I don't know who that was he was one-on-one with, but they had been defending really well all game, and to beat him there and then finish it, dirty. Absolute dirty performance, especially with how well Benfica's keeper was playing. Really, really well done from him. I think an 8.5, maybe a 9 for that finish. SofaScore has him as the man of the match. I'm going to give it to Pedri, but I think Rafinha with that finish at the end, obviously winning it. Okay, I'll give him a 9. Yeah, that was sick. And then Lewandowski. I think Lewandowski was okay. I didn't love him. I didn't think he was great, but scored 2 good pens. It's hard to score 2 pens in the same match. You saw him change his run up. Instead of stuttering on the second one, he just ran straight at it. Finished. Good job. You know what I mean? I think he linked up. I don't know. I don't think he played great in open play. I think he had a difficult time finding any space. Again, the center backs were kind of slamming into them and, doing their job to put him off, and it worked a couple of times. But again, we won the game. I think, I don't know. I think he could have been a lot better. He did score 2. Yes, they were pens, but there were a couple times where he was playing as a left winger at one point, put a Trivello cross in. It didn't find him in, but it was like, what the hell's going on here? I'll give him a 7. I'll give him an 8. He scored 2 pens and then, played okay, I would say. Not great by any means, but let's get into the subs here. Stop rambling. For Frankie, I think Frankie was okay. I think this was a better game from him. I still feel uncomfortable when he is the last man, say they took a corner, right? And he's got to collect the ball, or it's maybe up here and he has to either go for the header or collect it onto his chest with pressure on his back. I have very little confidence in him when he gets in that situation. I'm very worried, but I think today he was a lot better, decent in possession, opened up the pitch a little bit for Pedri to move forward. And I just think the subs overall bringing on Frankie and Fermin really changed the game there. And then when Hansi went back to the whatever, it was like the 3-2-5 or whatever lineup they had for a little while was interesting at least. So yeah, I'll give Frankie a 7. I think he did his job pretty well. For me, and I'll give him a 7.5, even though he got a yellow card for really no reason at the end. He was just arguing for argument's sake. But I think having him on allowed Rafinha to move over. It allowed Balde a little bit more space. It allowed Fermin to do a little bit on the left, led to a couple corners, which then I think a corner led to the Eric Garcia goal. Great shot by him, Eric Garcia. I'll give him an 8. Yeah, I think he defended pretty well, put a couple really good tackles in there, won the ball. Obviously, great header. 7.5, 8, I think is fair. Ferran Torres, too. I think it was a pretty normal match for him. I think it just opened up some space. He did want to win a foul right outside the box that didn't really lead to anything. And then he was able to control the ball at the top of the box that let Rafinha go out right at the end. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. 7.5, 8, I think is fair just for that. That is a game-winning move. Then Gerard Martin came in, and defensively, he did his job. You know what I mean? I'll give him a 6.5 because he did his job. Did what he needed to do. Didn't really put a foot wrong because he was on the pitch for 4 minutes and, whatever. Overall, guys, this was insane. If you're a Benfica fan, I know AA9 Skills is fuming right now. Rabona TV dropped into the stream for a little while. I got to check in on Adrian because that was tough. I would be upset with the ref if I'm a Benfica fan. I don't think he was great for us either. You know what I mean? I think there were a lot of non-calls that were left to play for the first 60 minutes. Then he started calling them. But overall, let me know what you think because I can ramble on and on. The point is we took a dub there. I think we're set in the top 8 just about now. That's huge. We're going up against Atalanta, who are right behind us now in the Champions League, and we don't really have to worry as much. We could probably put out a different lineup even if we wanted to, because I genuinely think we might be set in the top 8, and that's really all that matters. That moves us automatically past the next stage, or we don't have to do a qualifying game like a lot of the other teams will. This is huge for us. Visca Barça, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.